So the system so far has been really incredible. The great thing about Adobe Anywhere is I don't have to have a client come to my office. I can tell them how to log in to our system securely under an agreement, and they can see what it does. And when they see that, they really jump on board because they see that they're not losing their existing editors. They're not losing an existing asset that they're used to using or people that they're used to using. Those people are just working the same way they worked before. Profit is being maximized and no loss of talent that they previously wanted to keep. When it came time for us to acquire the material and parts necessary for an Adobe Anywhere system, it turned out that nobody had ever really done this before. Keycode Media put together an Adobe Anywhere system from scratch for the first time and really make it as optimal as possible, not scrape together some existing parts. Everything went exceedingly well to Keycode's ability to work with us in a very challenging environment.
I'm Mike Cavanagh, president of Keycode Media. We cover 14 states, and soon we will be covering everywhere. I wanted just to do sort of some highlights. We have Adobe here, we have some asset management people, Apace, Axel. We have Quantum in the back. I think you're going to find this real exciting. And the reason it's so exciting is we've all been working now untethered, right? We have phones, we have laptops, we have wireless. We are effectively untethered on almost everything we do with relation to work, except for one big thing. We have to come into work and park and take up parking spaces, and thanks to central casting, barely have any. And also limit how and who we work with based on geographic proximity, because it's just too hard to collaborate effectively remotely, as you've seen some of the larger companies really struggle with that. And what Adobe Anywhere has brought that I think is unbelievably compelling is the ability to be anywhere from a workgroup team level. So what that means, if you take a step back, is how can you build the best team and or parts of it, say in Prelude, the lowest cost loggers. But it's sort of disruptive in many ways, but it also allows you to find that best person to work on that project that you need that help with, to have the best absolute project available, as well more easily collaborate with your supply chain, your end users who are buying the content you're creating or working with you where you're helping them rebrand their marketing. And Adobe's had some amazing technologies that's come together and allowed this to work literally everywhere. So what I want everyone really to think about today is not only how cool this is and how boring we can make the technology sound to you, but more importantly, how can you use this as a disruptive influence, to change your business? We all know the cloud is happening. It's sort of in the video because of big files and pipes not all there, but it will be. And Adobe has a way today that you can do it today based on some of their technology they have. And it just transforms where you have to be to get your work done effectively and to bring your team together anywhere. Just think about remote collaboration in real time and how you can leverage that as a disruptive influence of good for what you do. So from here, I'm going to bring on Michael Kammes. Thank you all for coming. I think you're going to find this very compelling, and we're available afterwards to answer any additional questions.
The problem with following up your boss is you never know what the hell he's going to say. So my apologies if I end up retreading over the same text. So I'll make this real brief so we can really get to the heart of the geek stuff with Van back there. Keycode Media, as you may know, loves disruptive technology. That's one of the reasons why we came into business. When Mike started Keycode Media, it was because NLEs were new. NLEs were cool. NLEs changed the way you were editing. You weren't editing deck to deck. You weren't doing this anymore. You got to work with computers that made stuff ultra cheaper. We've kept that up over the years. Those of you who have been clients of Keycode Media know that we're always pitching new and unusual technologies that completely change your workflow. When we came across Adobe Anywhere, it very much was like a needle in a haystack, because there's not a lot of technologies out there that do everything that Adobe does. When we look at stuff like real-time shared projects, remote collaboration, offloading transcoding, thin clients, working in the same suite of applications for both effects and editorial, that just isn't done by a lot of tools, right? You have to go out and buy this from the App Store and download this and buy this and try and get everything to kludgy together to talk to one another. But what Adobe brings to the ecosystem is everything talks to one another, which is just fantastic. One other point I want to make sure that everyone here is aware of is that when you look at Anywhere, the core, the kernel, Anywhere is awesome software running on a bunch of servers. That's the core, all right? But just like any editing system, it's not just a computer and software, right? You need your Wacom tablet, you need monitors, you need speakers, you need an editing desk, you need storage. All these are things that make it work. It's a foundation. And what happens when you have a shitty foundation? You get this. All right? So when we talk about Anywhere, Anywhere is a complete ecosystem. So today, we're going to be talking about a couple components within that ecosystem, namely APACE and Axle, which are asset management systems that can help you actually control your media remotely and manipulate it, because of course you're not sitting in front of your storage, as well as Quantum, which actually is the spinning disk that houses all your media. So Van, if you want to come up here, we'll hand off the Adobe portion directly to Van. He's going to do a demo for 25 minutes or so. Then we're going to have Quantum come up. Quantum is one of our sponsors today, and they'll talk about how their storage interops with Adobe Anywhere and what they bring to the table in terms of a storage solution. So I'll let Van plug in, give us a couple seconds.
Okay. So as I mentioned, Premiere Pro's come a long way. If you haven't tried it, we'd love for you to try it. It's free on our website. You can get a 30-day trial. If you are coming from another platform and you're not familiar with Adobe, you can actually map Media Composer keyboard shortcuts, Final Cut keyboard shortcuts. You can import Final Cut XMLs, Avid AAF projects, link to the same media, will run on your same hardware. Pretty easy learning curve. We'd love for you to give it a try. If you're familiar with After Effects or Photoshop or any of the other Adobe tools, you'll find the Adobe keyboard shortcuts are great. They really help you get familiar with the product, and there's a lot of consistencies between the applications. So it's a fairly easy learning curve. We hope you'll give Premiere Pro a look. It's come a long way, as I mentioned, in the last couple of years. But we're going to talk about Anywhere today. So Anywhere really has two distinct functions. It's a collaboration system. So instead of a single user per project, it's multiple users collaborating in a project. And collaboration is a word that's been thrown around a lot and thrown around for a long time. I really break down collaboration as there's multiple people working, but communication's key when you have multiple people working on something. And what really your output needs to be, I think the real tough part of collaboration is versioning, making sure that everybody's in sync on what the latest version is. So Anywhere helps with versioning, with multi-user collaboration inside what we call a production, and I'll walk through that. It also allows what Mike Cavanagh talked about, remote access to media. So I use the analogy all the time as well with these mobile phones. When I started in the industry in the 90s, I was installing edit bays and putting systems together, and I'd be under a desk 8-10 hours a day on a short day. And people might call me and say, "Did you get that email I sent you? We've only had these smartphones about 10 years. It seems like longer. It hasn't been that long." And I'd say, "Nope, didn't get the email. Probably not going back to the office today. I'll get it tomorrow when I'm back in the office, when I'm in front of my desk on a landline, and I have email connections, and I can get back to you then." I mean, think of how much that's changed, and if somebody doesn't respond in 5 seconds now, we're annoyed, like, come on, what's taking so long? So, you know, we don't have to think about where we are, but for most companies, our email servers are in our data center. Maybe they're in the cloud, they're VPN, firewalled, secure servers. I never think about how far away am I from my server? Can I actually send an email now? I just send an email anywhere I am. So we think not just Adobe, but other companies that, as Mike Cavanagh alluded to, it will change. For right now, for your edit bay, certainly we've had the ability to pack and go, put things on a FireWire drive and take it with us and sparrow things around and do all of that. But to actually have access to all of your media, for the most part, you need to be in your edit bay. We do think that's going to change over the next couple of years, and we think Anywhere could be a really important part of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the hardware that we're showing here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down, and I'm going to sign out of Anywhere. So one of the nice things about Anywhere is we really designed it to be transparent for editors. There's really no learning curve. I'll teach you all how to use Anywhere in 2 seconds. But I'm at the standard Premiere Pro screen. We use the same version of Premiere Pro that you'd run in a local environment for Anywhere. So there's no new learning curve. It's not a thin client. It's not a different version of the application. I do have an Anywhere server here. It's not an official qualified server. It's my portable, fits in the overhead compartment server. So I'm running it on a laptop. Don't try this at home. This is just for development and demo purposes. But on my laptop there, I've got some media on the internal drive of that laptop. That laptop is also, it's running Windows. I've got some Windows services running there, which are made up on the Adobe servers. And then that's tied into a little Apple Airport right there. It's not Apple TV, it's actually an Apple Airport. And I'm connected via Wi-Fi to the Anywhere network. So the two servers, the two types of servers that make up the Anywhere system are what we call a collaboration hub, which is sort of the brains of the system. It manages the versioning, multiple users, LDAP, users and permissions, and all the things that are handled by the administrator. And it basically runs a database to host these productions. The second part of the hardware is what we call Mercury streaming servers. So it's the same engine underneath Premiere Pro that supports all the different codecs, but it's actually hosted on a server side. So those streaming servers and the collaboration server sit on top of your storage. So if you have some quantum storage, it's meant to be an open system, works with a lot of different platforms. You plug the servers into the quantum storage, and then you can put an asset management layer on top to help with some workflow automation. So we have Axel and Apace as two great examples of integrations with Anywhere that allow us to extend the functionality. So I've got my whole little mini data center there set up. And instead of logging into a project, these purple icons are Premiere Pro projects, which are, again, single user projects. I'm going to go ahead and sign into Anywhere via the Wi-Fi network here. So I've got an IP address of the server. Just going to type in a password. It's test, don't tell anybody. I'll hit OK. So if you might have noticed, that icon just turned red. It tells me that I'm now synced to an Anywhere server. And instead of just the purple icons, another icon popped up there. That is an Anywhere production. So a production is a superset of a project. It's a collaborative multi-user production. And again, it's hosted on the server. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. It's going to do a handshake over the network, start talking to the server and say, hey, I'm looking for this production. Can you send me the details on it? So it's syncing up. And again, I'm doing this all over a Wi-Fi. If I wasn't tethered to the projector here, I could walk around and hand this to you. Now I'm doing a demo and I'm 10 feet away or so. The interesting thing is that once you're in the network environment, distance really isn't a factor. Now, certainly, Mike mentioned India. That might be a little challenging based on latency and speed of light and how far it needs to get over there. Streaming media isn't that difficult. Editing media is very difficult. When you're talking about JKL and fast forward and rewind and load another clip and shuttle this endpoint, shuttle that endpoint, JKL, back forward, scrub. There's a lot going on in an edit system that's a little beyond just streaming media. But I've synced to my server here. It's opened up my Anywhere production. If you'll notice at the top here, it actually tells me the IP address. So it says I am Mitch Wood. He's a colleague of mine. Mitch, there's a shout out for you. I'm connected to the Edit Anywhere server at this IP address in the Waiting for Lightning production. So all of this media that you're seeing here actually does not exist on this laptop. It is on the internal drive of that laptop, which is again simulating your high-end storage, your server infrastructure that's in the background. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys have been around computers a lot, and marketing doesn't like when I say this because it doesn't sound sexy, but terminal mainframe computing, which used to be pretty popular, was all the heavy servers back in the data center. And what people had on their desk was basically a keyboard and a screen. And that was sort of the terminal. But all the processing, all the brains, and all the horsepower of the system was on the back side. So Anywhere works the same way. We basically decoupled the project from the individual user. So the project's hosted on the server. And the media is hosted remotely. Basically, I have the ability to have a much lighter client here. I don't necessarily need I'd love to have a beautiful new Mac Pro. Obviously, all of us would. I don't necessarily need that because the processing, the heavy lifting, is happening on the back end. We'll look at some media here. When I first heard about Anywhere, I was like, wow, that sounds great, but I'm kind of anticipating the YouTube experience. And Not picking on YouTube if there's anyone from YouTube here, we love YouTube, but you know, if you don't have a good network connection, you see buffering, you see that kind of experience. Here within Anywhere, I'm able to scrub quickly, edit, I can JKL, it handles fantastic. When I hit stop, it stops. When I hit go, it goes. I can go in here and scrub around really quickly. I can set an in and out point wherever I want. I could cut that into timeline. But it's handling the way I'd expect it to. I'm an editor. I want to be in the creative process. I don't want to be waiting when I hit play. I want it to play when I want it to respond. I want it to handle like a German sports car. And I think the team's done a really phenomenal job at performance. Again, I'm editing this over Wi-Fi. I could literally be in New York connected to the system as long as I'm VPN'd in. The distance doesn't really matter. I just need a good network connection and I can get access to this media. Over here I have a sequence. The interesting thing about the way this works is if I have a sequence that has a lot of effects or a complex sequence, and I can just expand this out a little bit, if I had to process a lot of effects and send them over the network, I might be trying to send 3 or 4 layers of video. That's going to bog down the network. So again, talking about the servers, they do the heavy lifting. Any rendering happens on a specific GPU on the back end in those servers, and it's passed here to my local client as a single stream of video. So I'm thinking we should be brave here. Let's take a look. This is, let's go to properties on this particular clip right here. And I'll just go ahead and zoom that in. It tells me it's on the C drive. That's my Windows box over there. There's the video, there's the export, and I mounted that. A unique identifier. This is a red R3D file, 5K epic. So the resolution is 5120 by 2700. I've got some red metadata here, and it tells me it's at this render node of that IP address of that server. So just to show you it's not smoke and mirrors, I'm actually looking at an epic clip located on the internal drive of that server. Now the reason I said I'm being brave, not that Anywhere can't handle it, it's that I'm trying to play 5K off the internal drive of that laptop, but let's give it a shot. I've got a little green indicator right below the program monitor there. That's my drop frame indicator. It just did a pretty darn good job. That's actually 4K red files. So I've got red files mixed in here with some interview footage, which is ProRes. I've got some AVC Intra. There's some legacy DV footage that was captured on tape off of VHS and up-resed. I've got some X Games broadcast material built in here. This is a mixed timeline, all different codecs. I'm playing this in real time, and I just played 5K epic footage over a Wi-Fi connection. So as I start to get my head around this product and get pretty excited about the capabilities of it, you know, a system like Quantum underneath this, just to realize that, you know, they could have massive amounts of online storage, maybe tied into an archive, literally with a laptop and a network connection. I could have petabytes of red 4K material wherever in my data center, secured, VPN protected, and I have access to all of it. I can all initiate it right here as long as my administrator gives me rights to see those productions. I've really, outside that distance barrier, I can now build a talent, as Mike said, I can build my team based on the talent and the right people for the job, not necessarily where they are, how much of a commute it is to get to our office and when they can be here and if they're in the middle of other projects and whatever. So it really opens up quite a few possibilities. We're pretty excited about it. I talked about a learning curve for it. So we're in a multi-user environment here. So if you're familiar with other systems that do shared projects, they're sort of the first come, first serve. If I open the bin, I'm the first one to open it, and I've got write access to that bin. Everybody else gets read-only access. So there's a fairly common, if you've been in that environment, to yell down the hall, hey, can you close that bin? I need to save this. I don't want to make a new bin and do a save as, because then I did that last time, and now we've got all these extra bins, and it's making a mess. So Anywhere, we designed it so that editors don't have to think about what's locked, what I've got access to. It's built so that everybody can work on the same sequence at the same time. Now, just because you can, I'm not saying you should. Usually you'll break it up when you get this act, segment, scene, however you want to divide it up. But I have the ability to have everybody work on the same project, the same sequences at the same time, and there's a conflict resolution engine within Anywhere. Now, it really takes a partner to help demo this and create a conflict, but what the system will do is when I'm working in a timeline here and I'm building out my cut, I'm working in what we affectionately call my own sandbox. So I'm not going to have someone come down the hall and say, I thought we were going to put this title and use this and use that as the opening shot. And I'm like, hold on, I'm not done yet. Give me a minute. So I'm essentially working in my own timeline here. There's nobody over my shoulder. And when I make any changes, let's just grab a clip and make a trim there. You'll notice there's two little buttons down here. And this is the learning curve for Anywhere. So one says share my changes. So I've got this cut and I want to publish it for everybody else to see. Let's just say, gosh, I'm awesome. Share that. I'll publish that to the server. I've just checked it in. I've shared my cut. Now it's available to everybody. Anybody else that's working on the system who's checked in footage, now I can check in footage local here on premise in the building where my Anywhere server is. I might also be remote. And let's say I've got some stuff I shot. I've got a card. I plug it into my system. The system will actually automatically start sending those files back to the Anywhere server. It'll let me work on the local copies while I'm doing that. As soon as they all hit the server, I share my changes. Everybody has access to them. And underneath, the timeline just flips, and now I'm working on the remote content. So we do have workflows if you're working remotely. But get changes, so if someone adds footage, my get changes light's going to come on. When I want to share my changes, I just share. Now, as I mentioned, the system's intelligent to know what's going on behind the scenes. So if Mike Cavanagh is also editing the same timeline, and he just checked in a version 10 minutes ago that said he's the awesomest editor, it's going to actually prompt me and catch me, and it's going to bring up a dialog box and say, you have a couple choices. Do you want to introduce your changes and add a version number? So now I can put a .1, I can put a date, I can put my initials, I can enumerate that or iterate that however I like. I can discard my changes, or I can go down the hall and say, Mike, why are you working on my sequence? I thought we talked about this. So it's going to catch you. It's not going to let you overwrite anybody's changes. It gives you the ability to enumerate that, and the collaboration engine actually helps you from overwriting anything and keep track of versions. As I mentioned, versioning, I think, is kind of the heart of collaboration. So it's that simple. There really isn't any learning curve. I've got the same functionality I do in a normal Premiere environment. I've got my hover scrub functionality. One thing that's kind of interesting is you'll see save is actually disabled. So everything I'm doing is actually being saved on the server. So if I lose my network connection, if I disconnect, I'm not going to lose anything. It's all been saved on the server. And just to accentuate that, if I go into a media browser here, and the media browser is what we use to bring in card-based material. It parses cards. It's great for importing sequences. I can browse other projects. But instead of looking on my local drive, I'm actually looking on the Anywhere server, and I'm in for waiting for lightning. This is a documentary on a skateboarder named Danny Way, done by the Bandito brothers. It's fantastic. It'll make you laugh and cry. Really great story. He invented this mega ramp that they use at X Games. He jumped the Great Wall of China. There's some great stuff in there. But I've actually got in this production history the ability to toggle a history slider. And so if I deleted a sequence out of my production, I have the ability to roll back in time. Remember, everything is being saved on the server, so I can kind of turn on the time machine functionality and actually go back in time to before any clips were added. There's the first clips that were added. There's sequences that were checked in. I can see notes on all of that. One other thing that I can do is there's a new Anywhere activity feed. So if I bring that up, it's kind of like a panel inside Premiere Pro. I can go ahead and dock that, customizable interface, and I've got kind of a social media feed. Now, it just shows me as the user, but it said, gosh, he thinks he's awesome. That's funny. I can see what's going on in the system. So if I'm working remotely with multiple people working on a project or production, and I want to keep track of what's going on, I have the ability to do that because I can kind of see here in my social media style feed what's going on in the system, people that have made notes, what's happening outside my current environment. One other thing that we recently added, let me make sure my network connection's still here. We added an iPad player for Anywhere as well. So if I just finished that sequence, I made a cut, I checked it in, I didn't have to render anything, I didn't have to flatten anything, I just checked in a cut. The rendering, again, all happens on the back end. So now if I had a producer, director, or somebody else involved in the project who potentially had an iPad, I can actually have them log into an Anywhere production. They'll see all the footage, and they can go ahead and play that sequence unrendered on their iPad. Now, it's not meant to replace a PIC system if you're using something more advanced for review and approval. but it's a really great system that I don't have to render this out, flatten it down to an MPEG, H.264 or a QuickTime, figure out how to send it to somebody for review. The second I check it in, without rendering, without transcoding, without flattening it all, they've got the ability to bring it up on their iPad and start playing it back if they're part of this production. So pretty unique. The ability to have that real-time functionality and real-time feedback. They can certainly add comments to the system as well. We've also added support for Prelude, which is our logging and rough cut application, and After Effects. Now, After Effects in the first iteration needs to work as a local client where it has direct access to the storage because of the way it renders. It does a pretty intensive tennis match with the server to render frames back and forth. But that's only a temporary solution for now. We have added After Effects. We're certainly looking at adding other applications as well. As I mentioned, the format support is a non-issue. We've done plenty of tests from New York to LA to San Jose. We have hosted servers in San Jose. This iPad was actually playing out of our servers hosted in San Jose rather than my local laptop here, just to show you the remote connection. But all the mixed codecs, all the mixed formats, and again, the ability to play this 4K, 5K red footage over a Wi-Fi connection on a laptop from wherever I am. Now, it does require a good network connection. You're not going to do 5K Epic on the go-go Wi-Fi on your airplane. You're not necessarily going to pull into Starbucks, but I've had plenty of people that are using this that are working at home in their fuzzy slippers. We just say, please, no video conferencing. There's some things should be kept to yourself, but the idea that I don't necessarily have to be in my edit bay to get access to all my footage is really revolutionary. Absolutely no learning curve for people. The shared projects and collaboration is something I've been so excited about because that really takes things to another level, and there's just the simplicity of use. I also have the ability to take a project and convert it to a production, or convert a production to a project. So if I want to pack and go, if I'm going to be in Death Valley and I'm not going to have internet connections, I can convert that back, come back in and check things back in. So we do have workflows if you're going to be offline. I certainly have the ability to do that. That's a quick overview. I wanted to open it up for questions, and happy to answer anything I can. Sir.
On that stream, if you were in a Starbucks and you had smaller bandwidth, can you scale the proxy stream on that side to get, if it's 5K coming out, but you need something that's less to get it through there, will it scale it down to bits and bytes?
So a couple things. As an administrator, I have the ability to set bandwidth as maximum or minimum. So if you, and I know you do finishing Bradford, if you're going to do uncompressed stuff and really high res off of here, I can also control the bandwidth that I want you to use so you don't oversubscribe things and affect anybody else. The system will dynamically, and I hope I emphasize this, that it makes sense. We're not creating proxies. It's not downloading any proxies to my local machine. It's actually just doing a handshake, a negotiation, and on the fly saying, I'm going to take this extreme case, Red Epic 5K, and stream it down to a 10, 15 megabit connection on this remote client. If I do have issues with playback, and I did have my drop frame indicator on, we were able to play that back fine, but I have a nice good Wi-Fi connection here, I can drop this down to quarter res. Now, I'm not affecting anything that outputs. This is just basically show me fewer pixels. I'll still get good quality. But if I have a lower bitrate connection or if I'm having trouble over my network, I can drop down the resolution there. There certainly is a floor. I don't want to oversell the system that you can do 5K on a 1 megabit connection. I mean, there's still physics are still an issue. If you have a poor network and you have latency and a lot of traffic, you may not get the same experience that you're going to want as an editor. So we do emphasize it's important to have a good network, to have folks like KeyCode build out the infrastructure to support this solution. It's not magic, but it is pretty amazing what it's doing. And really, this is, again, stuff we used to think about 10 years ago. Someday you'll be able to, and to see this starting to come to light with Adobe and other solutions, it's pretty exciting. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit more about the last two sentences in your presentation where you convert from production to a project or project to a production? Do I understand you to mean that if you don't necessarily have the bandwidth, that you can actually work locally and then re-upload those changes back to the cloud?
You can, and there's some methods to do that today, and I can't talk future too much. There's definitely ways that we want to make that easier in the future. It's a very common request that obviously you're not going to be all the time in a perfect environment with a great network. You are going to be on planes and things like that. So you do have the ability to take a production, convert it to a project, and then sort of have a pack and go environment. I think what maybe we could make better about that is just an easier sort of resync once you come back in. So that would be nice to see. And I can convert a project to a production. So if I started as a local user, as one person starting to build this, building some rough cuts, templates, ingesting stuff, and then the editing crew comes in, I can now convert this, make it a multi-user production. It'll take the project from here, push it over to the server, and now I'm in a collaborative environment with the ability to remotely access media as well. Sir?
Piggyback off this conversation, how is it treating the media? So if all the media is on the server and you want to work locally offline, does that mean it's downloading the entire media pool of media to your local system? And then, so that's the first part, and then obviously the other way around, if you're working locally first, and you're ingesting media onto the client system, does it then just upload all the media and the sequence that you're working on to the server?
So let me show you the second part of that first. So you asked about if I'm working, if I'm on a remote environment and I've got some footage. So I'll go into Media Browser. I went into a Canon XF card. So we've all seen these cards. You dig in, there's icon, clip, audio, video. You dive down 5 folders to get a cryptic name of one file, and you're like, what the? So I'll just double click on this, and it shows me all the nice, pretty thumbnails off that card, which is great. So let's say these shots I want to share with everybody else. So I'm just going to grab those. I'm going to drag and drop them into my remote production, and I'm going to quickly bring up a window called Progress. So what it's doing is it's actually now sending those frames onto the server over the network connection. Again, physics come into play. If I was using red and I have a low bitrate connection, it's going to take a while. I mean, there's definitely no.
You have to manually tell which media you want to upload. It doesn't analyze your sequence and just upload corresponding files.
Well, what I did is I took a card out of a camera. I'm remote. We just came off the shoot from today.
Yeah.
I plugged it in my system, and now I'm sharing this, so it's sharing it back to the server. So now everybody involved in the collaborative process can now work on it. If I didn't need everybody to share it, I could just plug in and work on it as a local project. But this automatically in the background uploads those frames. I can continue working. It'll just flip over to the hosted media as soon as it checks it in. So that's the workflow of checking stuff in remotely, and an easy way to get stuff into anywhere. Getting a consolidated version of the cut out can be a little more challenging, and I think that's where having an asset management system can really help you organize that data of what you need to take with you. It doesn't elegantly just say, just give me this whole sequence and consolidate it right now, today. That might be something that you'd see in the future. But there's definitely workflows for that pack and go, and it's definitely on our list of something that we want to optimize. Sure.
So that's pretty awesome that you can take the camera card out of the camera on location and just download it into the project. Is there a way to also get the audio files there too?
Yeah, it's anything that I check in remotely. It could be Photoshop files, it could be DPX frames, it could be just about any audio or video format that Premiere Pro supports, which is a pretty extensive list. Sure. Go ahead.
How does that manage the security on that? It's actually uploaded to the cloud.
Actually, so this is a great question, and I should clarify that. So this is not, what we would classify as typically a cloud-hosted solution. This is a private cloud solution, so it's meant to work on your own network. We strongly encourage that it's behind a VPN or a firewall or your own security system. It's not a hardened system with security. We've got passwords, and I can control, I can have the 2 car companies in base next to each other, and they'll never know each other's there. But you do want to have some level of network security to protect your assets, certainly. That's not part of Anywhere. That would be part of your network infrastructure through your router and through your network access points. Sure.
So if you're working on a sequence from home and it's a remote server, and you added a voiceover, is there a way to sync it so it goes to that meeting that you did locally?
Sure. All the syncing is nice. It actually just happens in the background. The only thing I have to do is share, and that does it. So we've added a new feature in Premiere Pro to do voiceover directly in the timeline. So as I lay my voiceover there, I might capture it to my local disk. But as soon as I bring it in that project, it's automatically sending those frames. I don't even have to tell it to send. I do want to tell it to sync if I've made any edit or changes so that I can publish those to everybody. But
could you bring up, we're getting a little cropping here. Can you show us where those are? If you bring up the bottom of the window just so we can.
oh, those buttons?
Yeah, they're.
Oh, sorry. There we go. So there's the training class for Anywhere. Share changes, get changes. I'm sorry, that was cut off. Thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, very simple. Those are the only, it looks like men's and women's bathroom, but those are just share changes, get changes, basically publish. So again, I can work in my own environment. I don't want to send the email until I'm done writing it. Maybe I need to tone it down first. So I work on my sequence once I publish it. And if a remote user, if you were out on the shoot and you just checked in that footage and you did some VO and you checked stuff in remotely, my get changes light's going to come on. And it's going to let me know, hey, I've got some new material. So maybe I'm in the sequence. I don't even want to think about it right now. I'll refresh when I'm ready to do that. But that's really all there is. And then the intelligence behind it, again, is that versioning to say, oh, someone else is working on the same thing. Let me let you know about that. Let's make sure we don't override each other, and I have the ability to enumerate versions from there. Sir?
The final renders of your project, once you complete,
Mm-hmm.
does it leverage the rendering on the server side and rest of the file locally? Or do you want to do an export from the cloud?
So it actually does, it does render everything back on the server when I do an export. There is something interesting going on, just I think it's a fascinating thing. If I apply effects here, and I do have an engine that has a GPU here, there's a little race that goes on. So if my local machine can render it first, then it's going to display that. As soon as the server's done rendering it, then it'll flip over. I don't even see that. It's totally transparent. But that's just to give the user the best experience. Also, something important I should have highlighted. When I'm parked on a frame like this, and this was interlace footage scanned to progressive, so it looks a little iffy. When I'm parked on a frame, we actually download every pixel of that frame. So if I'm doing critical color work or I'm doing some effects or adding an After Effects comp and things I want things to look, I want to know exactly how it's going to look, we're giving you every pixel here. When I start scrubbing and I go like that, it switches to an iframe. I don't even notice it. So there's some intelligent stuff going on in the codecs back there that I don't have to think about. Again, we wanted people creating and not worrying about the science. We'll do the science, you do the art. I've got about 2 more minutes, so I'll think, Bradford?
I just want to add on the collaboration part.
Uh-huh.
You brought footage in because you just shot it in 4K, you added it to your timeline, you cut it in, you like it, you shared it, syncs up to your server back there so everybody else in the production can see it.
Uh-huh.
Now another guy in that production has to leave, now you can see the assets, he wants to package it up and take it with him.
Sure.
Can he proxy down, or does he have to take your 4K files and put it on his laptop, or can he consolidate down into a lower resolution and offline and then go off and edit?
We don't have today the ability to flip out a proxy to a lower res. I mean, actually I could start a proxy and the server would render it and then I could share that. But that's also a great place where adding services on top through an asset management system, and there's a really deep, amazing REST API that's built around this. So if you have anybody that knows scripting or you work with companies like Axel or Apace who've already done the integration, you can have that tied in. You can have the frames passed to a telestream or whatever you like, and those can be forwarded. So you can build, and a lot of the customers that were pilots for this build a lot of workflow automation into it. One really interesting, a couple different ROI things I'll just talk about real quick before I wrap up. We had a motorsports company that goes on location to do events. And this was an extreme ROI, so I'm not saying results may vary. But they figured shipping editors out to an event, and they typically take about 10 per event, sending an edit system out there, finding an edit-based space, cabling, networking, getting an engineer out there to support them, travel expenses, meals, all of that stuff, roughly about $10,000 per person per event. So 10 editors, $100,000. The first time that they used Anywhere on a pilot, they sent the editors out to the event, and they put an Anywhere server in their data center. And they had people work remotely. They shot at the event. They forwarded it back to the server, and people worked, and they said, that was great, but that was pretty much the same workflow that we have today. So the next time they tried putting the Anywhere in a flight case and sending that out to the event, and they left the editors at home with their families in their edit bays. And they connected in. The event went fantastic. And they said, wow, that was Do the math, that was $100,000 on that single event by not having to ship people out. So that's an extreme ROI. One other is if people are building out a new facility and putting in infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, I may not need the latest, greatest heavy-duty hardware for my edit base. Don't go buy a Chromebook, but have something there that can handle a professional level of work, especially if you're going to work in projects as well. But it may offset some of the cost. Put the investment in the servers on the back end. Great, this is a product that has a really bright future, I feel, and then put less investment in maybe in the hardware and the edit base. So one last question?
If I want to gear up a little enterprise project, in the old days I'd rent an Avid system, it would go into a trailer somewhere on a stage, it would go to the production office on the side of the mountain. What are the pods going to look like for this application?
I think it's been out about 6 months, but 7, 8 months, but I still consider it a fairly new product. We've talked to a lot of companies that are sort of more in the rental environment and things like that, and it'll be interesting to see whether, depending on if it's just one system, whether it gets an environment where they host the system for you, and basically you just get a connection and you pay for a service to tie in. And
if it's in a cloud,
it's certainly, in a private cloud again. Or whether you would pack a system and take it with you and have the collaboration. If you're just a single user, you may want to just work on that remote shoot as a single user and then come back and sync with the rest of your team if you're in a collaborative environment. So there's no right or wrong or here's how it has to be. It's just interesting, and we'll see how it sort of plays out. We're working with a lot of partners that are excited about the product, so I think we'll see a lot more options in the future.
How can I track that?
Please come see me and get me a card, and let's keep in touch. And anybody that didn't get to answer questions, I'm here, so would love to talk to you guys. Thank you so much for your time.
My name is Darryl Wheeler. I'm with Quantum, and so I'm battling that world-famous cold that everyone's probably had 2 or 3 times. This is my 3rd round of it, but excuse the voice. It's kind of gone there, and we'll get through that. So I know you're probably dying from suspense of how many PowerPoint slides do I have. I've got 3. I didn't bring a demo storage. I didn't know how much we wanted to watch the platter spin. It's not really sexy, but it's like anything. We want it to work, right? We don't want to think about it. It's like the light switch. We want to flip it on. It works. It's like the water. We turn on the water, open the refrigerator. We want to have a beer in front of there. So it's like having that kind of appliance for us. And that's kind of the approach that Quantum's trying to take from the storage side. And so the business that we're in is trying to help you ingest your data and move it and manage it and archive it. And that's kind of our business in a nutshell of what we do. And we work with professionals like KeyCode to help you through that process of installing that type of product. So what I've got here, just a quick slide for you. These are kind of what I would tell you are our appliance, like a toaster toasts or a microwaves. That's our approach for, depending upon what you're trying to do in your workflow, we have specific appliances that apply to what you're trying to get done. The upper left-hand corner is what I would call our traffic cop. This is a metadata controller. It allows you to work in an environment where you can have multiple type of formats and multiple type of operating systems. You can be on Windows or Linux or Apple or a host of other type of programs, and you'll be able to share the storage between all your different users. And that kind of saves a lot of money for companies that are growing, and as the new tools come out on different platforms, give you some ability to continue to use those without having to buy new storage specifically. The guys in the middle is our storage systems. We use these, and they come in a couple different varieties and different formats depending on your workflow. From high-speed disks for editors that are doing high-end DPX files or doing a lot of visual effects or things of that nature, or we can scale it down to just depending upon what is required, and that's where the folks at KeyCode come in to help you determine what's best for the workflow. So the good news for you from a money standpoint is you don't have to buy one brand of disk that stays there and serves everybody, that maybe you don't need that for everybody. Maybe I need a couple types of disks for my high-end editors. I need someone for this kind, and this gives you the flexibility to do that. And then obviously in the last far right is what we call one of our archive towers. They come in a lot smaller. That's kind of the gargantuan one, if you will, going down the road. But what I wanted to introduce you to something that's, as you guys are all running into every day, and that is, it's the content forever. I've got to keep a copy of everything. I've got to keep every version of everything. I've got to keep everything that I filed. My clients want it. And we're introducing an object-based storage product that would like you to start looking out in the market for. And this gives you the ability to think about content forever, where you can grow your content and keep and continuing using the asset management programs and reach back into that archive of 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, and be able to recall that, not have to put it on tape and then wait for the time, 2 or 3 days like most of us have had to do if you have a project and your editor's coming back, hey, I need this project from a year ago, well, let me go off and get the tape, and in 2 days you'll have it. This gives you the ability to have almost instant access. And there's some things that that allow you to do that, but this is something I want you to keep a lookout for. So if you're in that business where your content's growing forever and you got to keep it and you want it online, because we know how sometimes you're cutting a show and then you want to come back and recut, you don't want to have to go to tape and bring it back. So this is kind of a tool that will allow you to do that. And then as Van mentioned, we actually are certified with the Adobe Anywhere platform, so as our 2 companies working together, our storage products and all the appliances that you saw on top of there, and this is a typical network that you see up on the right side, a typical workflow. Those have been tested and put through the paces, if you will, and we've worked with the folks here at KeyCode. They know exactly how to install it and implement the actual technology for you all. I told you it was short. That was it. Was that good? 3 slides? Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And Van, phenomenal demonstration. I learned something new every single time. This is really the trend. You know, when I talk to the clients, and a lot of you have known me in the space forever, and I basically made a transition in '94 from print to video because of just the concept of where print was going, and it wasn't advancing any further. And video, you know, we're going back '94. The concept is there are disruptions that are continuing to happen. And KeyCode Media has deployed, working with Adobe, 3 of these systems. And working in the field, and I think the most anywhere out there, Van can say yes or no, but I know we're up there in the leader worldwide. We're focused on this technology and the IT and creative side, merging it together. What KeyCode will bring, and what I want you to think about is, every 3 deployments we've done, we've focused on the successful outcome, not the, well, we hooked everything up and it's sort of working for you and bye-bye. It's, we want to make it work and we want to make it rock and want to make you successful. On how we do that is 2 things. I have a lot of really smart technical guys that can figure out what's the optimal configuration based on your budget. And then I have a lot of sales reps who've learned how to do ROI and payback analysis and put together a document for you to sell it within your organization, saying, if we make this type of investment based on the premise and the pain points we're experiencing, this is how much money we will save, and this is what it translates to. By month 16, we will pay back every dollar we've spent on this. And our ROI over 36 months is going to be 150%. You know, that's the type of analysis, both technically and financial, that we bring to the table, and we'd love you to consider us as a partner to work with you here. So thanks a lot for coming, and we're available for questions.